When my father drove away, my stepmother smiled and waved. 10 minutes later, the door closed, her smile vanished, and her hand slammed across my face. She did not know I had redesigned our security system myself or that a tiny camera on the bookshelf was recording. By the time the judge saw that video, she realized she had not just struck me, but destroyed the entire future she had so carefully planned. My name is Kayla Pierce, and for the better part of my life, I have learned that silence is often the loudest scream for help. I sat in the high-backed leather chair of the law office, the material cool against my back despite the layer of my blazer. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the gray skyline of Portland, Oregon, was weeping its usual drizzle, blurring the city lights into streaks of white and amber. It was a view I had grown up with, a view that used to bring me comfort in its consistency. Now, it just looked like the rest of my life, cloudy, obscured, and waiting for a storm to finally break. On the polished mahogany desk in front of me sat my laptop. The screen was bright, cutting through the dim ambient light of the office. The video file was paused at the 0-minute and 0-second mark. The thumbnail alone was enough to make my stomach turn over. A physical reaction I had been fighting all morning. It showed a living room that looked like it belonged in a magazine spread, beams of dark wood, a plush cream carpet that I was never allowed to walk on with shoes, and a fireplace that was purely decorative because Valerie did not like the smell of soot. Mr. Sterling, my lawyer, sat across from me. He was a man of few words, which I appreciated. He had been my father's lawyer for 20 years, but today he was mine. He took off his reading glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose, a gesture of exhaustion that mirrored my own soul. "You are absolutely certain you want to submit this to the court?" "Kayla," he asked, his voice low and grave. He did not look at me immediately. He looked at the frozen image on the screen. "Once we file this evidence, there is no turning back. The bridge is not just burned, it is incinerated. This will destroy her reputation. Yes, but it will also shatter your father's world." I looked at the screen. I looked at the woman standing there. Valerie, my stepmother, in the freeze frame. She looked elegant. She was wearing a cashmere cardigan that cost more than my first car. Her hair perfectly coiffed. Her posture rigid. She looked like the perfect wife, the perfect hostess, the perfect replacement for the mother I had lost. I took a slow breath, inhaling the scent of old law books and stale coffee. "I am sure," I said. My voice did not shake. I expected it to, but it remained steady, anchored by a cold resolve that had taken years to harden. If I do not do this, she wins, and she has already taken enough. "Mr. Sterling nodded slowly. He reached out and pressed the spacebar. The video began to play. The timestamp in the corner read 8 in the morning. The audio was crisp. I had installed that microphone myself, hiding it inside the spine of a hollowed-out encyclopedia on the bookshelf. It was designed to pick up whispers from across the room. On the screen, my father appeared. He was dragging a suitcase toward the front door. He looked older than I remembered, his shoulders slightly stooped, the weight of his company and his marriage pressing down on him. Valerie was right there beside him, her hand on his arm. She was smiling. It was that dazzling, practiced smile she reserved for charity galas and country club dinners. "Drive safely, darling," her voice chimed through the laptop speakers. It was sweet, sickeningly so. "Call me the moment you land." I watched as my father kissed her cheek. He looked at her with total trust. He looked at her like she was the anchor of his life. Then, he turned and walked out the door. The camera held the shot. Through the window next to the door, we could see his car pulling out of the driveway. We saw the red taillights fade as he drove down the winding suburban street, heading toward the airport for a business trip that was supposed to last 7 days. 10 minutes passed in the video, which I fast-forwarded through with a swipe of my finger. Then, the door clicked shut. The lock turned. The transformation was instantaneous. It was like watching a demon shed a human skin. Valerie turned away from the door, and the smile simply evaporated. It did not fade gradually. It was deleted. Her face went slack, then hardened into a mask of pure, unadulterated disdain. She smoothed her cardigan, not with anxiety, but with a chilling precision. She began to pace. I watched her on the screen, and I watched Mr. Sterling watching her. She walked to the window, checking the blinds. She walked to the bottom of the stairs, listening for any sound from the second floor. She turned in a slow circle, scanning the room. Her eyes swept right over the bookshelf. She looked directly into the lens of the hidden camera for a split second. A shiver ran down my spine in the office, even though I knew she could not see me. She had no idea. She thought she was alone. She thought she was the queen of the castle, finally free of the king. Then, the video cut to the moment I entered the frame. I saw myself from a third-person perspective. I looked small, even though I was 27 years old. I was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, holding a coffee mug. I looked tired. I watched the digital version of myself hesitate at the entrance of the living room. Valerie stopped pacing. She turned to face me. The audio picked up the change in her breathing. It was heavier, agitated. I paused the video right there, just before her hand went up, just before the violence. Mr. Sterling let out a long sigh. That footage alone changes everything, he said. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. We are not just talking about assault. Kayla, the audio you captured later, the phone call she made to her broker. That is conspiracy to commit fraud, attempting to liquidate assets that are not in her name, forging your father's signature on the transfer documents. He looked me in the eye. You realize that if you had not recorded this, no one would have believed you? I nodded. I knew. I had always known. Valerie was a master architect of perception. To the world, she was the grieving second wife trying to manage a difficult stepdaughter. To my father, she was a saint. To me, she was a predator who had been slowly, methodically erasing me from my own home. Whatever happens next, Mr. Sterling said, closing the folder on his desk, you need to be prepared. When your father sees this, it will not just break his heart, it will humiliate him. He will realize he has been sleeping next to a stranger for 5 years. It is better than him dying broke and alone because she drained him dry. I said, my voice sharp. Mr. Sterling conceded the point with a tilt of his head. Indeed, we will file the motion for the restraining order and the freeze on all joint assets this afternoon. By the time your father lands, the locks will be changed, and the police will be waiting if she tries to re-enter the premises. I closed the laptop. The screen went black, taking Valerie's face with it. Thank you, Mr. Sterling. I stood up and gathered my things. Walking out of that office felt different than walking in. When I arrived, I was a daughter seeking permission, leaving. I was a woman executing a sentence. I took the elevator down to the lobby and pushed through the heavy glass doors onto the street. The Portland rain had stopped, leaving the pavement slick and reflective. I clutched the USB drive in my pocket. It was a small, silver rectangle, no bigger than my thumb. It weighed less than an ounce, yet it contained the weight of 5 years of gaslighting, emotional abuse, and manipulation. I walked toward the courthouse, which was only a few blocks away. The majestic old building loomed ahead, its stone steps gray and imposing. People were rushing past me, focused on their phones, their coffees, their daily struggles. They saw a young woman in a blazer, looking perhaps a bit intense, but otherwise normal. They did not know that inside my pocket, I held a bomb. I stopped at the foot of the stairs and looked back toward the direction of my father's house, that house in the suburbs. It was a beautiful place, a craftsman home with a wraparound porch and a garden that my mother had planted before she died. My father had kept it exactly as she left it, until Valerie arrived. Valerie had slowly started changing things. A painting removed here, a chair replaced there. It was subtle at first. She claimed she was just updating the style, making it fresh. But I knew what she was doing. She was marking her territory. She was erasing the memory of the woman who came before her. She wanted to own that house, not just legally, but spiritually. She wanted to own my father, and she viewed me as the last remaining artifact of the previous administration, something to be dusted off and eventually discarded. I remembered the look on her face in the video, right before she struck me. It was not just anger, it was entitlement. She truly believed that she had won. She believed that because my father was out of town, because she had charmed the neighbors, because she had isolated me from my relatives, she could do whatever she wanted. She forgot who I was. She saw a sullen stepdaughter who spent too much time on her computer. She did not see a senior cybersecurity analyst who spent her days hunting down hackers and securing corporate networks for Fortune 500 companies. She did not know that while she was redecorating the living room, I was rewiring the sensor grid. She did not know that while she was whispering lies to my father in the kitchen, a high-definition microphone was capturing every syllable. I gripped the USB drive tighter. If I had not installed that camera on the bookshelf, if I had not been paranoid enough to leave a backup system running on a separate power supply, today would be very different. I would be the one standing on the street with a suitcase, kicked out of my own home. Valerie would have told my father that I attacked her. She would have bruised herself to prove it. She would have cried crocodile tears, and my father, God bless him, would have believed her because he could not fathom the depth of her malice. I would have lost my inheritance, my relationship with my dad, and my home. But the camera was there. A single, unblinking eye that saw the truth when no one else was looking. I took a deep breath, the cold air filling my lungs. It tasted like rain and exhaust and victory. This was not going to be easy. The next few weeks would be a nightmare of legal battles, screaming matches, and public scrutiny. My extended family would take sides. Friends would gossip. My father would probably age 10 years in a single week. But it was necessary. I looked up at the inscription above the courthouse columns, "Equal justice under law." This is not just a story about a slap, I thought to myself, repeating the words that had become my mantra. This is not even really a story about a wicked stepmother, though she certainly fits the bill. This is a story about ownership. It is a story about who really owns this house, who owns this life, and who owns the truth within it. Valerie thought she could steal it all with a smile and a forged signature. She thought she could rewrite reality. She was wrong. I walked up the steps, my heels clicking rhythmically against the stone. With every step, I felt lighter. The fear that had lived in the pit of my stomach for years was dissolving, replaced by the cold, hard certainty of evidence. I reached the heavy wooden doors of the court entrance and pulled one open. As I stepped into the rotunda, waiting for the security check, my mind drifted back to understand why I was standing here today, ready to burn my family's reputation to the ground to save its soul. You have to understand how we got here. You have to understand the slow, creeping poison that Valerie brought into our lives. It did not start with a slap. It started much earlier. I closed my eyes for a brief second, letting the noise of the courthouse fade away. My memory rewound, past the video on the laptop, past the lawyer's office, past the last 5 years of tension. We have to go back to the beginning. We have to go back to the day my father sat me down at the kitchen table, looking nervous and hopeful, to tell me he had met someone. We have to go back to the day he decided to marry Valerie. My mother passed away a week after my 18th birthday. It was a slow, cruel departure, courtesy of cancer that hollowed out our home, leaving just me and my father, Mark Hartman, rattling around in the silence. He was a good man, a brilliant engineer who ran his own small firm, Hartman Technical Solutions. He was a man who understood complex schematics and stress ratios, but he was utterly lost when it came to navigating the emotional wreckage she left behind. For a few years, it was just us. We found a rhythm, a quiet understanding. I went to college, got my degree in network security, and was just starting my career. We were healing, or at least, we were functioning. Then, about 3 years after Mom died, Valerie appeared. My father introduced her at a quiet dinner. She was in her mid-40s, 10 years younger than him, and radiated a kind of polished, expensive warmth. She was beautiful. Not in the natural way my mother had been, but in a way that required significant maintenance. Her nails were always perfect. Her blonde hair was a masterpiece of subtle highlights, and she smelled faintly of gardenias and money. She spoke in a low, gentle voice that was designed to soothe. She was, I learned, a fundraiser for a prominent art gallery. Her specialty, however, was in making men feel seen. She would listen to my father talk about his engineering projects, her eyes wide with a fascination that bordered on adoration. She would touch his arm at just the right moment, a gesture of support that looked completely natural. Her masterpiece, though, was her backstory. She was a woman who had, by her own account, suffered an acrimonious divorce, a difficult childhood, a world that had not appreciated her gentle spirit. She was, in her own narrative, a survivor. And my father, a natural protector, was completely drawn into her performance. I was 23 when they got married. I stood in the front row of a small, tasteful garden ceremony, wearing a dress she had picked out for me. Everyone around us was weeping with joy. My aunts, my father's business partners, his friends. They all told him how wonderful it was to see him happy again. They all told me how lucky I was that my father had found such a kind, beautiful woman. I smiled until my jaw ached. I wanted to believe it. I was a young woman, on the cusp of my own life, deep into the logical, binary world of cybersecurity. I knew my father was lonely. I knew he deserved a partner. I had no right to stand in the way of his happiness just because she was not my mother. But then, during the reception, I saw it. Valerie was standing by the champagne fountain, laughing at something my father had said. An older relative, a distant cousin of my mother's, came up to congratulate her. Valerie's smile remained perfectly in place, but as she turned her head slightly to look at the woman, her eyes went utterly cold. It was a look of such complete, arctic indifference that it felt like a physical blow. It lasted only a second. The woman, oblivious, patted her arm and moved on. Valerie turned back to my father, her warmth instantly restored. But I had seen it, and I could not unsee it. A shiver ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the evening breeze. For the first year, I tried. I truly did. I was building my career, saving up for my own place, and I only visited the house on weekends. I was an adult, not a child, and I was determined to treat this like two adults forming a new, blended family. The small skirmishes began almost immediately. They were so small, so petty, that I felt insane for even noticing them. It started with the house, my mother's house. I came home one weekend to find the living room completely rearranged. The worn, comfortable armchair my mother always read in was gone. In its place was a sleek, modern, and deeply uncomfortable chaise lounge. I thought this would brighten up the room. "Dear," Valerie said, her voice full of sweet reason, "that old chair was looking so worn out. It just brings the whole space down. Do not you think?" I found the chair in the basement, tagged for a charity pickup. A few weeks later, my mother's collection of antique botanical prints vanished from the hallway. They were replaced by abstract art in stark black frames. "I just wanted to give the house a more modern, cohesive feel," she explained, her hand on my father's arm. "We have to look to the future, not cling to the past." My father, who hated confrontation, would just nod along. "Mark, I think Kayla and I will have a girls' day," Valerie would say. "We can go through some of your mother's old things." That girls' day consisted of her going through my mother's closet, holding up dresses and blouses. "These are lovely," she would say, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "But the style is so dated. It is not healthy to keep all this. Kayla, it is like a shrine." When I protested, saying I wanted to keep them, her tone would shift, but only if my father was out of the room. "Kayla, you are a grown woman. You cannot be this sentimental. It is just stuff. You are making your father uncomfortable by clinging to it. You are being ungrateful for the beautiful new home I am trying to build for us." And there it was, the word she would come to use as her primary weapon: ungrateful. The pattern quickly became clear. When my father was present, Valerie was the epitome of a supportive, caring stepmother. She would ask about my job, offer to make me dinner, and praise me for being so independent. She would put her arm around my shoulder, a picture of maternal affection. The moment he left the room, the temperature would drop 20 degrees. Her smile would tighten. Her voice would lose its honeyed edge. "You rely too much on your father," she told me one evening as we were cleaning up after dinner. "He worries about you constantly. He feels he cannot live his own life because he is so worried about yours." I was 24 and had just gotten a major promotion. I was paying my own bills, had my own insurance, and was actively looking for an apartment I could afford. I relied on my father for nothing except a family connection. "That is not true," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "Oh, honey," she said, her condescension a tangible thing. "You do not see it. Men like your father, they need to feel needed. But you are not a little girl anymore. You are taking up space in his life that he needs to give to me now, to our marriage." Every conflict, every disagreement was perfectly calibrated. She never raised her voice. She never said anything overtly cruel in front of him. She just planted seeds of doubt. She made me the unreasonable one. She made me the moody, overly sensitive daughter who was jealous of her father's new wife. If I had gone to my father and said, "Valerie is mean to me. She is throwing away Mom's things," I would have sounded like a petulant child. And she knew it. I felt like I was being gaslit in my own home. I was an intruder in the house I grew up in. I started spending more time at work, staying later than necessary, taking on weekend projects. I finally saved enough for a security deposit on a small apartment downtown. I told my father it was because the commute was too long. He looked relieved. Valerie, at the dinner table, raised her wine glass. "To Kayla," she said, her smile brilliant, "our little bird, finally flying the nest. We are so proud of you." Her eyes met mine over the rim of the glass. The look was triumphant. The real shift came after I moved out. I thought distance would solve the problem. It only changed the battlefield. Valerie's focus shifted from my presence to my father's assets. She had quit her job at the gallery shortly after the wedding, claiming the stress was too much. She wanted to focus on making a home for Mark. This, apparently, included a complete overhaul of his finances. "Mark, darling, you are an engineer," she would say, laughing lightly. "You do not have time for all these boring spreadsheets. Let me handle them." She got her name added to his primary checking account, then his savings. She started sitting in on meetings with his accountant. I would come over for Sunday dinner and the conversation would be about investments. Valerie had an idea about selling the lake house. The lake house was the one piece of property my mother had owned outright, her family's cabin, which she had left to me in her will. "It is just sitting there." "Kayla," Valerie said, passing the mashed potatoes, "the property taxes are a drain. If we sell it, we can reinvest the money. We could use it as a down payment on a place in Palm Springs." "I do not want to sell it," I said. "It was Mom's." "It is yours," Mark clarified gently, looking at Valerie. "Not me. It is Kayla's to decide." Valerie's smile did not falter. "Of course, darling, of course. It is just a suggestion. I am only thinking of what is best for the whole family's financial future." My father, caught in the middle, did what he always did. He tried to build a bridge, which in reality just meant letting Valerie have her way to avoid a fight. He would defend me on small things, like the lake house, but he would concede on the larger daily erosion of his own autonomy. He was a man who craved peace, and Valerie was a woman who was an expert at waging a war of attrition. He would give in on joint accounts, on investment decisions, on selling stock, just to have a quiet evening. He was so terrified of being alone again that he was willing to overlook the red flags I was frantically, silently, trying to point out. I watched, helpless, as she wove herself into the very fabric of his life, isolating him from his own history, his own money, and slowly, from me. This slow, agonizing dance continued for 5 years. My relationship with my father became strained. Our phone calls were short, superficial. When we met, It was always with Valerie present, acting as the perfect hostess, cutting off any real conversation before it could begin. I was on the outside, looking in, watching the woman I despised charm my father into obscurity. The tension culminated at a dinner about a month ago. It was a perfectly normal Tuesday. My father had just landed a major consulting contract, one that would require him to travel to Seattle for a full week. He was excited, energized. Valerie was playing the proud, supportive wife. She had insisted I come over for a celebratory dinner. The three of us sat at the dining room table, the one she had bought to replace my mother's. "Oh, we will miss you terribly, Mark," Valerie said, placing her hand over his. "But this is such a wonderful opportunity. Do not you worry about a thing at home." She turned her gaze to me. Her smile was perfectly in place, a placid mask of maternal care. "When your father is away on his trip, I will take care of the house." She paused, just for a beat, her eyes holding mine. "And you?" It was a simple statement, a promise, but coming from her, with that smile and that look in her eyes, it was not a comfort, it was a threat. My skin went cold, and in that moment, I knew, with the kind of primal certainty that bypasses logic, that something was about to break. I just did not know it would be me or her. Valerie's threat, as veiled as it was, hung in the air long after that dinner. But what she never understood, what she never even bothered to ask about, was what I actually did for a living. To her, I was just Kayla, the girl who was good with computers, a vaguely annoying millennial stereotype she could easily dismiss. When I told her I had a job in IT security, she just smiled that placid smile and said, "Oh, that is nice, dear. Fixing printers?" In reality, I was a senior cybersecurity analyst at Northwave Digital Security, one of the top firms in the Pacific Northwest. My job was not fixing printers. My job was to think like a criminal, a spy, or a sociopath, all before they made their move. I was paid a six-figure salary to be professionally paranoid. My days were spent in a secure, air-gapped office downtown, conducting penetration tests on corporate networks. Companies paid Northwave tens of thousands of dollars for me to legally hack them, to find the one tiny vulnerability in their digital fortress that a real attacker could exploit. I would breach firewalls, bypass encryption, and socially engineer my way into executive inboxes. After I found the holes, I would design the solutions: multi-layered defense systems, biometric access controls, and intricate, AI-driven surveillance networks. I designed camera systems for banks, data centers, and the private homes of tech CEOs who were, if anything, more paranoid than I was. While Valerie saw me as a financial burden, a leftover child still clinging to her father's wallet, I was a trusted asset to some of the biggest companies on the West Coast. I was completely financially independent. This was my biggest secret, the one I guarded more fiercely than any network. I had never told my father or Valerie my exact salary when I moved into my own apartment downtown, a small, clean one-bedroom place with a view of the river. I just told them a friend was moving out and gave me a good deal. When Valerie would pointedly ask about my finances, usually in a concerned tone meant to imply I was struggling, I would just say, "I make enough to live on." I let her believe I was barely scraping by. I knew, instinctively, that if she ever found out I was making more money than her, she would see it as a threat, or worse, another resource to be controlled. My apartment was my safe house, my bug-out location. My financial independence was my armor. About 2 weeks after that tense dinner, my father called me. "Hey, kiddo," he said, his voice cheerful. "Your stepmother and I have been talking, there have been a few break-ins in the neighborhood. Nothing serious, but it got us thinking. We are still using that old security system from 10 years ago." I knew the one. It was a basic alarm panel with a few window sensors, a relic from the early 2000s. "We were thinking of upgrading," he continued, "and Valerie suggested we call a professional service. But I thought, why would I do that when I have my own in-house expert? You know this stuff best, Kayla." I felt a strange chill, a prickle on my neck. Oh? Yeah, I was hoping you could take a look. Maybe give us some recommendations. You know, some of those new smart cameras. Maybe a new lock for the front door. Whatever you think is best. Sure, Dad, I can do that, I said, my mind already racing. That is great, he said, relieved. Valerie was a little hesitant. You know, she said she did not want our house looking like a fortress, but I told her you would make it discreet. I could just picture it. Valerie's initial annoyance. Our house is not a bank, Mark. But then, the practicality would sink in. The idea of protecting her assets, her new domain, would appeal to her, and my father, trusting soul that he was, saw it as a perfect way to include me, to make me feel useful in the home I was increasingly alienated from. It was the perfect cover. I told my father I would order some equipment using the company discount and install it myself the following weekend. I did not use a discount. I bought the best system on the market with my own money, a top-of-the-line setup I usually reserved for executive clients. It included high-definition night vision cameras, sensitive microphones, encrypted cloud storage, and a video doorbell, all connected to a smart hub that I could control remotely. When I arrived at the house that Saturday, I had 2 large duffel bags full of gear. My father was in his home office, working on his company's books. Valerie was supposedly at a spa day. She said she trusts you to handle it all. Honey, my father said, patting me on the back before disappearing into his office. I got to work. I was in my element. This was my job. I was methodical, clean, and professional. I replaced the old, flimsy lock on the front door with a heavy-duty smart lock. I installed the video doorbell and tested the angle, ensuring it captured the entire porch. I mounted a camera under the eaves in the backyard, aimed at the patio doors. I ran the wiring for another camera in the main upstairs hallway. I configured everything to run on a secure, separate network that I firewalled off from the rest of the house's smart devices. She would not be able to hack into this system even if she knew it existed. Everything was linked to a single, encrypted app on my phone. Then, I got to the living room. This was the center of the house. This was where Valerie held court. This was where she and my father had their nightly glasses of wine. This was where I had seen her eyes turn to ice. I installed the main camera, as planned, on the mantelpiece. It was small, white, and blended in perfectly with the decor. It was obvious. If you were looking for it, it was the security camera. But then, I opened a small box from my bag. It contained a piece of tech not available to the public. It was a pinhole camera, no bigger than the end of a pencil, with a wide-angle lens. I had acquired it from a vendor demonstration. I looked at the large, built-in bookshelf that dominated one wall. It was filled with my father's old engineering textbooks and Valerie's collection of pristine, unread classic novels. I felt a pang of something. Guilt? No, not guilt. It was a feeling of crossing a line. I was about to put my own father under surveillance. Then I thought of Valerie's voice. I will take care of you. My hesitation vanished. I got out my toolkit. I was a professional. This was a vulnerability assessment. The asset was my father. The threat was his wife. I found the perfect spot, inside the spine of a fake book, a hollowed-out copy of War and Peace that Valerie kept there for show. I carefully drilled a pinhole, aimed the lens, and wired the camera to a tiny, independent battery pack I had built myself, one that would last for weeks and trickle charge from a hidden USB cable I threaded behind the shelves. I linked this camera to my system, but I put it on a different channel. It would not show up on the main app dashboard. It was my private feed. I added it, just in case. I spent the next hour testing the system. I sat in my old bedroom, my laptop open. I activated the app. The screen lit up with multiple feeds. I saw the empty hallway. I saw the front porch, where a mailman was dropping off a package, and I saw the living room. My father walked into the frame. He was holding 2 coffee mugs. He walked to the window, looked out, and sighed. I could hear the sigh, clear as day, through the sensitive microphone. He looked tired. Then, Valerie came in. She was back from her spa day, wrapped in a silk robe. She came up behind him and wrapped her arms around his waist, resting her head on his back. "How is she doing?" Valerie's voice murmured, smooth and soft. "Is she almost finished playing spy?" "Val, come on," my father said, his voice weary. "She is helping us." "I know, darling," she said. She kissed his back. "I just worry. It feels so invasive. Cameras everywhere." My father turned and hugged her. "It is for our own good, for our security. Now, let's go see if she is done. I am starving." They walked out of the frame. I sat there, my laptop warm on my knees, watching the empty room. My heart was pounding. It felt so strange, so incredibly wrong, to have this godlike view of their lives. I felt a power that was both intoxicating and nauseating. I was a professional, and I had just bugged my own family. I closed the laptop, my hands shaking slightly. I thought I was installing a system to protect the house from strangers. I thought I was doing a favor for my father, to protect him from the world outside. I never, in my wildest nightmares, expected that the system I had just built would be the only thing that could save me from the enemy living inside the walls. The contract my father landed was a big one, a consulting gig in Seattle that would keep him out of town for a full week for his small firm. It was a significant win, a sign that his reputation was still growing even in his late 50s. He was practically bouncing off the walls with excitement, talking about potential follow-up work and new client streams. The house, for a few days, was filled with his optimistic energy. Valerie, naturally, played the role of the endlessly supportive wife. She was a vision of domestic devotion. I watched from a distance as she went through his closet, selecting his best suits and shirts, creating a little pile on their bed. She printed his itinerary and put it in a leather folder. She bought his favorite travel-size snacks. "You just focus on your meetings, darling," she said to him over dinner, her voice a warm caress. "Do not you worry about a single thing back here. I will take care of the house, and Kayla and I will have a nice, quiet week. Everything will be perfectly fine." I was sitting across from them, pushing a piece of chicken around my plate. As my father beamed at her, grateful for her efficiency, her eyes flicked to me over the rim of her wineglass. Her smile remained, but her eyes were like chips of ice. The message was clear, an addendum to her spoken words. Remember your place. Remember to behave yourself when the audience is gone. A familiar knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. It was a feeling I had come to recognize over the last 5 years. It was the feeling of an impending storm, the oppressive drop in atmospheric pressure just before the sky rips open. My father was the buffer. He was the large, oblivious, peacekeeping force that, by his very presence, kept Valerie's more overt manipulations in check. He was the person she had to perform for. With him gone, the show would close, the curtain would fall, and I would be left in the dark with the real actress. My experience as an analyst had taught me to recognize patterns in human behavior just as I recognized them in code. Vulnerabilities were not just technical, they were human, and Valerie was a master at exploiting them. With the primary administrator, my father, offline, she would undoubtedly try to elevate her own privileges. She would test boundaries, see what she could get away with, and try to solidify her control. I knew, as certainly as I knew my own name, that this week would be a turning point. The night before he was scheduled to fly out, my father did something unusual. He called my cell phone, not the house line. "Hey, kiddo, Valerie's at her book club. I am on my own. Feel like grabbing a burger at the old place?" The old place was a small diner we used to go to, just me and him. After my mother passed, it was our place. Valerie hated it. She said the grease smell clung to her clothes. My heart gave a painful little lurch. "Yeah, Dad, I would love to. I can be there in 20 minutes. We sat in a worn vinyl booth that smelled of coffee and fried onions. For a little while, it was like it used to be. We talked about his project, about a new piece of tech I was working with. It was easy, but then, as he was finishing his coffee, his expression grew serious. "Kayla," he said, setting the mug down. There is something I have been meaning to talk to you about. Now that this new contract is starting, well, it got me thinking about the future, about what if. I set my own mug down. What if what, Dad? He sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. You know, I am not getting any younger, and I have two people I love very much, you and Valerie. He paused, looking down at the table. I am having Mr. Sterling update my will. I want to make sure everyone is protected. I want to be fair to both of the women in my life. The word fair landed between us like a grenade. I felt my blood run cold. I knew what fair meant in this new family dynamic. Fair meant that the things my mother and I had believed would be mine, the house I grew up in, the company he built, were now contested territory. Fair was the word he used when he was about to capitulate to one of Valerie's demands. It was a word that meant I was expected to sacrifice something to keep his new wife happy. Dad, I said, trying to keep my voice even. What Mom left me is mine, the lake house. That is separate. And your company, I always thought. And it will be, he said, a little too quickly. Of course, it is complicated. A marriage is a partnership. Valerie contributes. She runs the house. She supports me. She is entitled to. Well, I just want to make sure it is all clear. That is all. I do not want any fighting if something happens to me. The fighting has already started. I wanted to scream. You are just the only one who cannot see it. But I said nothing. I just nodded. When we got back to the house, Valerie was home. She was in the living room, curled on the sofa, reading a magazine, a picture of domestic tranquility. Oh, you are back, she chirped, her smile bright. Did you two have fun? We just grabbed a bite, my father said, kissing the top of her head. He looked exhausted, the weight of his fairness settling on him. Valerie looked at me. What were you two talking about so seriously? You look like you just came from a funeral. Just the will, my father said, collapsing into an armchair. Valerie's hand, in the middle of turning a page, froze. Her entire body went rigid. I saw it. She looked at my father, then at me. Her eyes narrowed for a fraction of a second. The will? She said, her voice dropping that sweet, high-pitched tone and becoming flat. Mark, what about the will? Oh, just updates, my father said, waving his hand dismissively. Sterling's handling it, just dotting I's and crossing T's. Valerie's smile returned, but it was brittle. Of course, that is so responsible of you. Darling, she looked back at her magazine, but she was not reading it. She was thinking, calculating. Later that evening, at dinner, she made her move. My father was talking about his flight schedule. Valerie, while passing him the salad bowl, said, I am just so glad you are getting everything in order. Mark, it is so important. I just worry about, well, you know, sometimes children, even adult children, can get a bit possessive. They can forget that a marriage is a primary commitment. They still think they are the center of everything. Her eyes were on her plate, but the comment was aimed at me, a precision-guided missile. My father, oblivious, just nodded. Everyone is going to be taken care of. Val, do not worry. I decided to stay the night. I told them it was because I wanted to see my dad off in the morning, which was partly true. The other truth was that I needed to be inside the network. Late that night, long after the house was dark and the sounds of my father's and Valerie's muffled conversation had faded, I sat in my old bedroom with my laptop. I was not just testing the system, I was hardening it. I logged into the admin panel, my fingers flying across the keys. I ran a diagnostic on all 8 cameras. All feeds were live. All audio was crisp. I checked the cloud storage. All files were encrypting and uploading correctly. Then, I went to the user access control list. There were 2 accounts with administrator privileges: Mark, Hartman, and Kayla, Pierce. I saw in the logs that a 3rd account, Valerie, Hartman, had been created 2 days ago. My father must have done it, probably at her request, thinking he was being inclusive. So you can check the front door, honey. I looked at the permissions for her account. She had basic viewing privileges, but I saw the failed login attempts. She had tried, 3 times, to access the admin settings. She had been testing the fences. My jaw tightened. I created a new user group. Basic, user. I assigned her account to it. Then, I went into the group's settings and surgically removed its permissions. I blocked her ability to see the system logs. I blocked her ability to access the archives. I blocked her ability to see the camera on the bookshelf. I blocked her ability to see the camera in my father's office. I left her with one privilege and one privilege only. She could see the live feed from the front door doorbell camera. Nothing else. Then, I triple-locked my own admin account, tying it to a 2-factor authentication key that did not exist outside of my own brain. She could not brute force her way in. She could not guess the password. She could not even see the system she was locked out of. As I was saving the configuration, I heard a noise, a faint creak on the floorboards in the hall. I killed the light on my laptop screen, my heart instantly pounding. I sat in the dark, listening. Another creak, this time on the stairs. I quietly pulled up the live feed from the hallway camera. It was dark, but the night vision clicked on, bathing the hallway in an eerie green glow. Nothing. I switched to the living room, and there she was, Valerie. She was not in her silk robe. She was dressed in dark sweats, her hair pulled back. She was standing in front of my father's desk, the one he kept in the corner of the living room. On the desk was a small, metal fireproof safe where he kept important documents, passports, birth certificates, the original deed to the house. She was not touching it. She was just looking at it. Her head was tilted, as if she was listening to it, trying to learn its secrets by sheer force of will. She stood there for a full minute. Then, she moved to his desk. She gently, so gently, tried the main drawer. It was locked. She tried the file cabinet. Locked. She turned and looked around the room, her eyes scanning. She was looking for a key. Then, she padded into the kitchen and came back. She did something I did not expect. She did not try to pick the lock. She just took a piece of paper and a pencil from the desk cup and did an old-fashioned pencil rubbing of the lock's brand and model number. She was researching. She folded the paper, slipped it into her pocket, and went back upstairs. I sat in the dark, my blood feeling like ice water. She was planning something. A few minutes later, I heard her bedroom door open again. I tensed, but she did not come back downstairs. Instead, I heard her voice, a low murmur from the hallway. "Kayla? Honey, are you awake?" She was at my door. I did not move. I did not breathe. "Kayla?" she whispered again, tapping lightly. I stayed silent. After a long, tense moment, I heard her footsteps retreat. She was checking to see if I was asleep. A new thought struck me. I pulled up the log from my father's computer. It was separate from the security system. She had tried to log in. 4 failed password attempts, all within the last hour. She was getting desperate. I did not sleep. I sat there and watched the feeds until the sun started to stain the sky gray. The morning was a blur of forced cheerfulness. My father, excited for his trip, did not notice the undercurrent of tension that was so thick I could barely breathe. Valerie was the perfect wife again. All smiles, making him coffee, handing him his briefcase. She had even, I noted, put on a light pink sweater, the color of innocence. I walked him to the door. "Be safe, Dad," I said, hugging him tightly, tighter than usual. "Call me, please." He looked at me, a little confused by my intensity. "I will, kiddo. I will call tonight from the hotel. It is just a week. You too? Be good." "We will," I said, my voice hollow. He turned to Valerie. She put her arms around his neck and gave him a long, passionate kiss. "I will miss you every second," she whispered, loud enough for me to hear. "Miss you too," he said, picking up his suitcase. He gave one last wave and walked down the path to his car. We both stood at the door. We watched him put his bag in the trunk. We watched him get in. We watched the car start. We watched him back out of the driveway. We watched the car turn the corner at the end of the street, disappearing from view. Valerie did not move. She just stood there, her arms still half raised in a wave, that brilliant, loving smile plastered on her face. The second the car was gone, her arm dropped. Her smile did not just fade, it collapsed. Her face went from warm and loving to a mask of cold, hard stone in less than a second. She turned from the door, her back to me. "Do not," she said, her voice a low, dangerous growl I had never heard before. "Go anywhere." She walked toward the living room, her steps heavy and deliberate, and the front door clicked shut behind me, sealing me inside with her. The heavy front door clicked shut, and the sound echoed in the sudden, oppressive silence of the entryway. It was a sound of finality, like a vault being sealed. Valerie stood with her back to me for a long moment. I could see the rigid line of her shoulders under the soft pink cashmere. The air in the house changed. It was no longer a home. It was a pressurized container. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. The smell of my father's coffee and cologne was gone, replaced by the faint, cloying scent of Valerie's gardenia perfume. Her voice, when it came, was unrecognizable. The sweet melodic lilt was gone, replaced by a low, guttural command. "Do not move." She turned around, very slowly, the face I had known for 5 years, the face of smiles and gentle concern, was gone. The woman looking at me now was a stranger. Her eyes were flat, her mouth a thin, bloodless line. It was the face I had seen for a split second at the wedding reception, the face that had haunted my instincts every time. Now, it was here, and it was in charge. "Where do you think you are going?" she asked. I held onto my bag strap, my knuckles white. "I am going to my apartment," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. "I just stayed to see Dad off." She took a step toward me, and her heels made a sharp, dry click on the hardwood floor. It was an aggressive sound. "You are going nowhere," she said, not as a request, but as a statement of fact. "Not while your father is away. I am in charge of this house, and I am in charge of you." "I am 27 years old, Valerie," I said, trying to inject logic into a situation that was clearly leaving the realm of reason. "You are not in charge of me. I have my own apartment. I have a job. I'm just visiting." A harsh, dry laugh escaped her. It was a terrible sound, like stones rattling in a tin can. "Your job?" she scoffed, as if the word tasted bad. "Your little apartment. Do not you dare pretend you are independent. You are a leech. Kayla, you have been a leech on your father since the day your mother died, and you are a leech on him now." I flinched, the words striking harder than a physical blow. "That is not true." "Is it not?" She advanced another step, closing the distance between us. We were in the living room now, right in the center of the plush cream rug, right in the line of sight of the mantelpiece camera, and more importantly, in the perfect, wide-angle view of the bookshelf. "You are just like her," Valerie spat, her face contorting. "Your sainted, perfect mother, holding on to him, even from the grave. You have been trying to block this from day one. You have been trying to turn him against me since I arrived." "I have done nothing," I said, my voice rising slightly despite my best efforts. "I have stayed out of your way. I have tried to respect his decision." "Respect?" She was almost shouting now. "You call what you do respect? You mope around this house with your sad little eyes, making him feel guilty. You remind him of her every single day. You are a ghost. You are a blockade to my family. I cannot build a new life with him when the old one is still sitting at the dinner table." This was it. The performance was over. The years of pent-up resentment, jealousy, and pure, unfiltered malice were pouring out of her. "This is not about my mother," I said, my professional instincts taking over. The part of me that de-escalates and analyzes. This is about you. You want something. What is it? What is it? She repeated, her eyes wide with a manic energy. What do you think it is? You stupid little girl? It is about fairness. It is about what I am owed. She turned and stalked to my father's desk, the one she had tried to break into last night. She slapped her hand flat on its polished surface. I give him my life, she hissed. I quit my job. I run this house. I manage his social life. I make him happy. And what do I get in return? I get to find out, from a throwaway comment, that he is updating his will to make sure the precious little princess is protected. Her voice dripped with scorn. He told me, he told me about your little private dinner last night. My stomach turned to ice. He told me he wants to be fair, she continued, her voice a low, dangerous monotone. And I know what that means. It means he is still planning to give you everything. This house, the company, the money he and I are building together. And I am supposed to get some allowance? Like a child? That is between you and him, I said, taking a step back toward the door. This has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with you, she roared, lunging away from the desk and blocking my path. You are the one in his ear. You are the one he is trying to protect. He is weak. He is sentimental. And you are exploiting that. I am not exploiting anyone, I said, my voice hard and cold now. The analytical part of me was fading, replaced by a defensive anger. You are the one who has been isolating him. You are the one who is trying to get your name on accounts that are not yours. You are the one demanding rights to a lifetime of work you had no part in. Her eyes flashed. I had struck a nerve. I had called out the truth, and she was not prepared for it. In her world, I was a passive, mopey child. I was not supposed to be an adult who could see her game and call it by its name. She was used to my father's passive presence, a buffer who would absorb her aggression and my quiet resentment, a man who would beg for peace at any price. Without him here, it was just her and me, a direct confrontation, and she was losing control. You, ungrateful, brat, she seethed, her chest heaving. After everything I have done, after I welcomed you into my home. This was my home first, I said, and the words were out before I could stop them, sharp and true. Her face went blank. The rage was replaced by a sudden, terrifying calm. You are going to push him until you give him a heart attack, she whispered, her voice a sickly sweet poison. You know he is not well. All this stress you are causing, all this fighting, it is killing him. If you do not cooperate, if you do not agree to tell him that you want me to be an equal partner, I will have to tell him. I will tell him you have been threatening me, that you are unstable, that you are so eaten up with jealousy over your mother that you tried to hurt me when he was gone. Who do you think he will believe? Kayla? The hysterical, grieving daughter who has always hated me, or his loving, supportive wife? I stared at her. The audacity of it, the sheer, calculated cruelty, was breathtaking. She was weaponizing my father's love for me and his fear of losing her, all in one move. You are a monster, I whispered, the realization hitting me with the force of a physical blow. I am a survivor, she corrected me, her voice as cold as a winter morning, and I will not let a little girl who does not know her place destroy my future. She took a step closer. I did not back up. I held my ground. I looked her directly in the eye, letting her see the contempt, the disgust, and the absolute lack of fear. I would not be her victim. That was my mistake. She wanted a victim. She needed me to be weak. My strength, my defiance, was the one thing she could not handle. You look at me, she hissed, and you see— What? You think you are better than me? She was so close I could smell the gardenias, a scent I would hate for the rest of my life. I am done with you, I said, my voice like ice. I am leaving, and when my father gets home, I am going to tell him exactly what you just said. I turned to walk away. I never saw it coming. Her hand shot out and grabbed my left arm, her acrylic nails digging into my skin, yanking me back with a strength I never would have guessed she possessed. The shock of it made me gasp. and in that second of shock, she used her other hand. She hit me. It was not a shove. It was not a tap. It was a full, open-palmed slap across the left side of my face. The sound of it was sharp. A gunshot crack in the silent room. My head snapped to the side. My hair flying into my face. My skin exploded in a white-hot, stinging pain. The world tilted. My ear rang. I stumbled back, my hand flying to my cheek, my eyes wide with a shock so profound I could not even process it. She stood there, her chest still heaving, her hands still raised slightly. Her face was a mask of triumphant, distorted rage. Then she smiled, a small, cruel smirk. "Your father," she whispered, her voice a low, victorious purr, "is not here to protect you." I stared at her. The pain was already fading, replaced by an adrenalized, crystalline clarity. My skin was on fire. My arm throbbed where her nails had been, but my mind was perfectly, terrifyingly calm. The line had been crossed. This was no longer a war of words, of passive aggression and emotional manipulation. She had put her hands on me. She had escalated this from a family drama to a criminal act. And in that moment, as I stared at her smug, victorious face, one single, beautiful thought bloomed in my mind, cutting through the shock and the pain. It is all on tape. The camera on the mantelpiece, the wide-angle camera on the bookshelf, every word, every threat, the sound of her nails on my skin, the sharp, undeniable crack of the slap, her face, twisted in rage, her final, damning words. The system was running, the microphones were hot, the feed was already encrypted and uploading to a secure server in another state. I lowered my hand from my cheek. I looked her directly in the eye. I did not cry. I did not scream. I did not raise my voice. I let the silence hang in the air for a full 5 seconds. I watched her victorious smirk begin to waver, replaced by a flicker of confusion. She had expected tears. She had expected me to collapse, to run away, to prove her right. Instead, I just looked at her. "You just made," I said, and my voice was a stranger's, a cold, dead, level tone I did not recognize as my own. "The biggest mistake of your entire life." She let out a short, scoffing laugh, but the confidence in it was gone. "Oh, please," she sneered, trying to recover her power. "What are you going to do? Go tell your daddy? It is your word against mine, and you are just a hysterical little girl." She turned, her back to me, and walked toward the kitchen, her pink sweater a beacon of false innocence. "You are not going anywhere," she called over her shoulder. "We are going to have a long talk about your future." She thought she had won. She thought she had broken me. She had forgotten who I was. She had forgotten that I was the one who built the fortress. I did not move. I just stood on the cream carpet, my cheek burning, and I let her walk away. I listened to her open the refrigerator. I listened to her pour a glass of water. Her hand probably shaking just a little, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of her victory. She had no idea that she was not just in a house. She was in an evidence trap, and she had, with her own hand, sprung it. My cheek was on fire, a throbbing, radiating heat that was already starting to swell, but the pain was a distant signal, a buoy bobbing in a vast, cold ocean of adrenaline. I just stood there, my hand still in the air where I had touched my face, and I watched her. Valerie had walked into the kitchen, her back straight, with the confidence of a decisive victory. She had finally done what she had been itching to do for 5 years. She had put me, the interloper, in my place. I heard the refrigerator door open, the clink of a glass, the pour of water. She was hydrating after her assault. When she walked back into the living room, she was holding a glass of water, sipping from it calmly. She expected to find me on the floor, or sobbing in a heap, or gone. She did not expect to find me standing in the exact same spot. My head now turned to face her. My eyes as cold and as steady as the camera lens I knew was capturing her every move. Her composure faltered, the sight of me, not broken but just watching, infuriated her. My silence was a new, unexpected form of resistance, and it made her lose the last thread of her control. "What?" she snapped, her voice breaking on the word. "What are you staring at? You think you are so much better than me? You think you have won something? You have nothing." She was monologuing now, high on adrenaline and rage, needing to justify the line she had just crossed. She began to pace, the water in her glass sloshing. "I have been trying to make him see sense for years," she ranted, gesturing wildly with her free hand. "I have been trying to get him to be a modern man, to understand how a partnership works, but he is still stuck in the past with her." She was talking, finally, the things she had only hinted at, the things she had kept behind her perfect smile, were now bubbling to the surface in a torrent of self-pity and greed. I told him, "Mark, it is not fair. It is not fair that I'm a guest in this house. It is not fair that your daughter, who does not even live here, has more power than your own wife. It is not fair that if you die, I get some stipend, while she gets the kingdom." She stopped pacing and pointed a finger at me. "I deserve this. I have earned this." This was my moment. The analyst in me took over. The victim stepped aside, and the interrogator took her place. I had to de-escalate the violence, but escalate the confession. I needed her to talk. I needed her to fill the tape. I let my voice shake, just a little. I let my eyes widen, as if in genuine, terrified confusion. "What?" I whispered, my voice hoarse. "What do you mean? What kingdom? What do you want?" It worked. The question, so naive and weak, opened the floodgates. She saw me as a child she could finally lecture, finally put in her place. "What do I want?" She laughed, that same dry, rattling sound. "I want what is mine, you stupid girl. A marriage is a 50-50 partnership. I am his partner. That means this house," she slapped the wall, "is 50% mine, his company, which I host dinners for, which I support him through. 50% mine, his bank accounts, which I am not even allowed to see. 50%. That is not greed. That is protection. That is what a smart woman secures for her future." She was boasting now. She was proud of her cold, hard transactional view of love. "I have been keeping track of everything," she continued, her eyes gleaming with a feverish light. "The money he wastes, the money I spend on this house, on his company events, on my clothes to make him look good. I have the receipts. I have been keeping a separate ledger. I am not an idiot." My blood ran cold. A separate ledger. That was evidence of intent. That was premeditated. "And you," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "you are the only thing in the way." She leaned in, and I could smell the gardenias again. "You tell him what happened here today. You even hint at it. And I swear to God, Kayla, I will tell him you flew into a rage. I will tell him you attacked me." She pointed to her own cheek. "I will show him the bruise I'm going to have. A woman my age, attacked in her own home by her unstable, jealous stepdaughter. He will have you committed. He will sign the papers himself, just to protect me." It was a brilliant threat, and she believed it would work. "I have tried to be nice," she said, as if she were the one being wronged. "I have tried to help him manage his life. I even tried to get into his email, his bank accounts, just to see what a mess it is, to help him organize. But he has everything locked down like a fortress. Probably your idea. Was it not? Your little security measures?" She had just confessed to attempted unauthorized access of financial accounts. I could practically hear Mr. Sterling's pen scratching on a legal pad. I had to keep her going. I had to play the part. I used her own words against her. "But, Dad," I stammered, touching my stinging cheek. "Dad said, he said he wanted to be fair. At dinner, he said he was making the will fair." Valerie threw her head back and laughed. "His fare?" she scoffed. "His fare is giving me the crumbs and giving you the whole damn cake. I have given him suggestions. I have shown him what a modern, equitable will looks like. I have told him, Mark, if you love me, you will protect me. But he is too sentimental. He is weak. He is still married to a ghost. She set her glass down on the coffee table with a sharp click. She was all business now. The rage had burned off, leaving a cold, calculating core. So here we are, she said, clasping her hands in front of her. This is the part where you have a choice. You have two options, Kayla, and you will choose one. She began to pace again, like a CEO laying out a hostile takeover. Option 1. You go to your father. You call him, tonight, in Seattle. You tell him you have been thinking, and you are so sorry for being difficult and possessive. You tell him that you want him to put my name on the house, as an equal partner. You tell him you want him to make me a co-owner of the company. You tell him you want us to be a real family. You endorse me. You give me your blessing. She stopped and smiled. That is the clean way. Option 2, she continued, is a little different. I can make you an offer, a severance package. I will convince Mark to give you a gift, a graduation present, an early inheritance, let's say, $100,000. My mind reeled. The number was insulting, but it was specific. $100,000, she said, tasting the words. Enough for you to go away, buy a little condo somewhere else, start a new life, far away from here. In exchange, you sign a binding legal document, a non-disclosure agreement, and you agree, in writing, to never contest the will, ever. She let that hang in the air. And if I do not, I whispered, playing my role to the end. Her smile vanished. If you do not take one of those two options, she said, her voice a flat, dead thing, I will burn you to the ground. I will execute the plan I just told you. I will tell him you attacked me. I will make him choose Kayla, and he will not choose the unstable, violent daughter who is trying to destroy his marriage. He will choose me. He will choose peace, and you will be disowned, cut off, with nothing, not a dollar, not a picture, nothing. This was it, the entire game, laid bare on the cream-colored carpet. I had to make her believe. I had to make her believe she had won. I let the real pain in my cheek, the real shock of her venom, well up in my eyes. I let a single tear, a tear of pure, white-hot rage, spill over and trace a path down my throbbing skin. I looked at the floor. I let my shoulders slump. I do not know, I whispered. I made my voice crack. $100,000? It is too much. I looked up at her, my face a mask of broken, terrified confusion. I need to think. Can I just go to my room? I will stay here, tonight, like I said. I need time to think about it. Please. A slow, triumphant smile spread across Valerie's face. It was the smile of a predator that has just successfully cornered its prey. She had broken me. She had won. Yes, she said, her voice returning to that soft, magnanimous, fake kindness. You do that. You go upstairs. You think hard. Think very, very hard about what your future is worth. We will talk again in the morning. I am so glad we finally understand each other. I did not say another word. I grabbed my bag, turned, and walked out of the living room, up the stairs. I did not run. I walked, my back slumped in defeat. I felt her eyes on me, a physical weight, until I turned the corner. The second I was in my old bedroom, I shut the door and locked it. My entire body was shaking. I slid down the door, my back against the wood, and let out a single, silent breath. The performance was over. I pulled out my phone. The app was open. The little red REC icon was glowing in the corner of all 8 feeds. I swiped to the cloud storage, the file, living room main cam, bookshelf cam, audio feed. From the last hour, was already uploaded, encrypted, secure. The screen of my phone was a mosaic of my house, the empty hallway, the dark front porch, and the living room. I sat there in the dark, my face illuminated by the screen, and I watched. For an hour, nothing. Then, at 10:30 p.m., Valerie entered the living room again. She was in her silk robe, a fresh glass of wine in her hand. She sat on the sofa, right in front of the bookshelf, right in the primary cone of the microphone. She pulled out her cell phone. I tapped the screen, bringing up the audio feed, and hit the local record button on my phone's app, just to be safe. I heard her dial. I heard it ring. "Hi, it is me," she said, her voice low and intimate. A pause. "Yeah, it is done," she said, and she laughed, a little, breathless laugh. "No, he is gone. His plane landed an hour ago." A longer pause. She was listening. "I had to," she said, her voice hardening. "The little bitch finally pushed me too far. She is thinking about it upstairs. I offered her the buyout, $100,000. She listened again, swirling her wine. "Yeah, I think she will take it. She is weak, just like her mother, scared. It is the only way. Robert, once she is gone, he will be pliable. We can move forward with the plan. Refinance the house, liquidate some of that Hartman Tech stock. He will be signing whatever I put in front of him by the time he gets back. He will just be so relieved the family drama is over." My blood turned to ice water. Robert Fielding. He was not a broker. He was my father's accountant, the man who handled his payroll, his taxes, the man who had access to everything. This was not just a greedy wife. This was a conspiracy. "Okay," she said, finishing her call. "I will call you tomorrow. She will be gone by noon." She hung up. I was reeling, my mind trying to process the word conspiracy. Liquidate. Robert, when I saw movement on another feed. I tapped the small square labeled Office Cam, the feed from my father's private study. The one I had restricted her access to filled my screen. The room was dark, but the camera's night vision bathed it in a ghostly green. Valerie was there. She had changed out of her robe and was back in the dark sweats from the night before. She was carrying a small toolkit. She was kneeling in front of the small metal fireproof safe. My heart was in my throat. I watched, breathless, as she took a small metal pick and a tension wrench and went to work on the cheap, standard-issue lock. She was not an amateur. After a few tense seconds, I heard a faint click through the open door, picked up by the hallway mic. The safe door swung open. I watched as Valerie pulled out a thick stack of documents. She did not take them. She did not run. She was smarter than that. She laid them out on my father's desk, one by one, right under the camera's eye. The original deed to the house, my father's original will, the one from before he met her, my mother's will, passports, a thick sheaf of stock certificates. Then, she pulled out her phone, and she began to take pictures. One by one, page by page, she calmly, methodically photographed every single document. I sat in the dark, my face illuminated by the green glow of the feed. I pinched and zoomed on my own screen, watching her create a perfect digital copy of her entire crime. This was not just assault. This was not just a family dispute. This was grand theft, in progress, and I had a front row seat. I sat in the dark of my old bedroom, the blue light of my laptop screen painting my face in ghostly hues. My cheek throbbed with a dull, persistent heat, a physical reminder of the line that had been crossed. But my hands were steady. I was not crying. I was coding. I was not just saving the video files. I was building a digital fortress around them. I created 3 separate backups. One went to a secure, encrypted cloud server based in Switzerland, a service I used for my most high-profile clients. One went to a physical external drive that I locked in my own bag. The third went to a hidden partition on my father's own home server, a dead man's switch, that would email the files to 5 different contacts if I did not enter a code within 48 hours. I verified the integrity of the files, the slap, the threat, the confession about the buyout, the phone call to Robert, the accountant, the cracking of the safe, the photographing of the will. It was all there. high definition, crystal clear audio, time-stamped and watermarked. At 2 in the morning, I picked up my phone and dialed Jason. Jason was a law school friend I had known since college, a fierce public defender who lived on caffeine and righteous indignation. He answered on the third ring, his voice thick with sleep. "Kayla, is everything okay? It is 2 a.m. I need a hypothetical." "Jason," I said, keeping my voice low. "Oregon law. Recording devices in a private residence, installed by a resident, authorized by the homeowner, admissible in court?" I could hear him shifting, waking up. If the homeowner consented to the installation, and it is in common areas where there is no reasonable expectation of total privacy, like a living room, not a bathroom, then yes. Why? What is going on? And what if those cameras caught a domestic assault on an adult, followed by a conspiracy to commit fraud and theft of documents? There was a long silence on the other end. "Kayla, are you safe?" "I am safe," I lied. "I just need to know the play." "If you have that on tape," Jason said, his voice sharp now. "You do not just have a lawsuit, you have a criminal case. You have leverage that could crush someone. But you need to be careful. If the aggressor knows you have it, they might try to destroy the evidence or escalate the violence. You need to get out of there, and you need to get a shark, not a family lawyer, a shark." "I have a shark," I said, thinking of Mr. Sterling. He was my father's lawyer, but he was a man of absolute terrifying integrity. "Thanks, Jason." "Kayla, seriously, if you need a place—" "I am fine. Go back to sleep." I hung up. I did not sleep. I spent the rest of the night reviewing the footage, cataloging every timestamp, creating a dossier that would be irrefutable. When the sun came up, painting the room in soft grays and pinks, I stood up and walked to the mirror. The bruise on my left cheek was blooming, a purplish red mark that looked angry against my pale skin. I did not cover it with makeup. I wanted her to see it. I wanted her to feel proud of it. I went downstairs at 7 o'clock. Valerie was already in the kitchen, brewing coffee. She looked fresh, rested, and victorious. When she saw me, her eyes went immediately to the bruise. A small, satisfied smile touched her lips. "Good morning," she said, her voice dripping with false cheer. "I trust you slept on our conversation?" I slumped my shoulders. I looked at the floor. I let my voice sound small and defeated. "I did." "And?" She took a sip of her coffee, leaning against the counter. I think you are right," I mumbled. "I cannot win this. I do not want to fight anymore. I do not want to be cut off." Valerie let out a long, relieved sigh. "Oh, Kayla, that is the first sensible thing you have said in years. You are making the right choice. $100,000 is a lot of money. You can do a lot with that." "I just need to go pack," I said. "I will. I will go back to my apartment and wait for the paperwork." "Not so fast," she said, holding up a hand. "The paperwork will take a day or two to draw up. In the meantime, since you are still here and your father is away, this kitchen is a disaster." I looked up, blinking. What? "The cleaners are not coming this week," she said, gesturing vaguely at the pristine countertops. "And I have a migraine coming on from all this stress you caused me. Since you are waiting for your payout, you can earn your keep, clean the kitchen, and vacuum the living room. I want this house spotless for when Mark gets back." It was a power play, pure and simple. She wanted to humiliate me one last time. She wanted to see the independent career woman scrubbing her floors. "Okay," I said softly. "I will do it." "Good girl," she said, patting my arm, the same arm she had grabbed yesterday. "I will be in the sunroom." I spent the next 2 hours cleaning a house that was already clean, but I was not just cleaning. I placed my phone on the counter, face down, the audio recorder running. Every time she came in to criticize a spot I missed, every time she made a snide comment about how I finally knew my place, it was being added to the file. "Make sure you get under the sofa," she called out from the other room. "I dropped an earring there last week. God knows you need the practice for your next job. I vacuumed. I wiped. I played the role of the beaten dog. And with every swipe of the cloth, I felt my resolve hardening into diamond. At 10 o'clock, I decided it was time. I went upstairs and packed a small duffel bag. I did not pack everything, just enough to make it look like I was running away. I pulled out my phone and sent a text message to Mr. Sterling. Mr. Sterling, it is Kayla Pierce, Mark Hartman's daughter. I need to see you immediately. It is an emergency regarding my father's safety, his assets, and criminal activity within the family. I have evidence. Please clear your schedule. The reply came 2 minutes later. Come now. I walked down the stairs, the bag slung over my shoulder. Valerie was waiting in the hallway. She saw the bag, and her smile widened. Leaving so soon? She asked. I cannot stay here, I said, keeping my head down. I will wait for your call about the money. Smart decision, she said. She walked with me to the door, literally escorting me off the premises. As I reached for the handle, I paused. I knew the camera above the door was rolling. I knew the microphone was hot. Valerie, I said, turning to her. Are you sure about this? Dad is going to be heartbroken if I disappear. She laughed. It was a cruel, dismissive sound. He will get over it. He has me. And honestly, Kayla, it is better this way. You are never going to fit into the future I am building. The best thing you can do for your father is vanish. She leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper. Good. You should know your place like that. Do not blame anyone else later. You brought this on yourself. I looked at her. I memorized her face in that moment. The arrogance, the cruelty, the absolute certainty that she was untouchable. Goodbye, Valerie, I said. I walked out the door. As I walked down the driveway, I heard the lock click behind me. She had locked me out. She did not know she had just locked herself in with the evidence that would destroy her. I drove straight to the city. My hands were tight on the steering wheel, but I was not shaking anymore. I felt a cold, precise clarity. I parked in the garage under Mr. Sterling's building and took the elevator to the top floor. Mr. Sterling's office was a world away from the suburbs. It smelled of old leather, lemon polish, and serious money. The receptionist looked up, startled by my appearance. The bruise on my cheek was impossible to miss now. Mr. Sterling is expecting you. Ms. Pierce, she said, her eyes lingering on my face. I walked into his office. Mr. Sterling was standing by the window, looking out at the city. He turned when I entered. He was a tall man with silver hair and a face etched with lines of experience. When he saw the bruise, his expression went dark. Kayla, he said, stepping forward. My God, what happened? I need you to sit down, Mr. Sterling, I said, placing my laptop on his heavy oak desk. And I need you to watch this, all of it. I opened the laptop and connected it to the large monitor on his wall. I brought up the file. I played the slap first. Mr. Sterling watched in silence. I saw his jaw tighten. I saw his hands clench into fists at his sides. He had known my father for 30 years. He had known me since I was a child. Seeing his client's wife strike his client's daughter was a shock to his system. Jesus, he whispered. Keep watching, I said. I played the threats, the buyout offer, the confession about the separate ledger. Then, I played the video from last night, the phone call to Robert. Mr. Sterling's eyes widened. Robert? Robert Fielding? Mark's accountant? Listen, I said. The audio played, refinance the house. Liquidate some of that Hartman Tech stock. He will be signing whatever I put in front of him. Mr. Sterling's face went pale, then red. That is conspiracy, he muttered. That is breach of fiduciary duty. That is incredible. Then I played the final clip, the safe, the lock-picking, the photography of the documents. When the video finished, the room was silent. The only sound was the hum of the computer fan. Sterling took off his glasses and cleaned them slowly. It was a gesture I knew he used to buy time, to process complex information. When he put them back on, his eyes were hard as flint. "Kayla," he said, his voice low and controlled, "you have just handed me a loaded gun. This is not just a divorce case anymore. This is a criminal indictment." He walked around the desk and sat down, pulling a legal pad toward him. "Assault and battery," he listed, writing furiously. "Extortion, attempted fraud, unauthorized access to computer systems. That is a federal crime, by the way, given the banking attempts, conspiracy to commit theft, invasion of privacy." He looked up at me. "Does she know?" "She thinks I am broken," I said. "She thinks I am waiting in my apartment for a $100,000 hush money check. She thinks Dad is going to come home, sign some papers, and I will disappear." "She is wrong," Sterling said. "Dead wrong." He leaned back. "Your father lands in 3 days?" "Yes." "We wait," Sterling said. "We do not file the restraining order yet. We do not tip our hand. If we move now, she might run, or she might destroy physical evidence in the house, that ledger she mentioned. We need her to feel safe." He looked at the calendar. "When Mark lands, I will arrange a meeting. I will call it a family estate planning session. I will tell her that Mark wants to finalize the updates to the will that they discussed. She will think she has won. She will think you have capitulated and Mark is ready to sign everything over." "She will come happily," I said. "Exactly," Sterling said. "We will have everyone in this room, you, me, Mark, and Valerie, and we will lay it all out on the table. Mark needs to see this. He needs to see who he is sleeping next to." I nodded. "He is going to be devastated." "He will be," Sterling agreed gently, "but it is better than the alternative. Without this video, she could have cleaned him out in 6 months. You saved him, Kayla." He stood up and extended his hand. I stood and took it. His grip was firm, warm, and reassuring. "You have endured a lot," he said, looking at the bruise on my face. "More than anyone should have to in their own home. But you were smart. You were incredibly smart." "I just wanted to protect the house," I said quietly. "You did more than that," he said. "If you have been brave enough to live in that war zone for 5 years, I need you to be brave for 3 more days. Can you do that? Can you stay away, keep quiet, and let the trap snap shut?" "I can," I said. "Good," Sterling said. "Go to your apartment. Lock the door. Do not answer her calls. Let her stew in her victory. We will see her on Monday." I walked out of his office and back to the elevator. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't happiness, exactly. It was heavier than that. It was the feeling of a burden shifting. For years, I had been carrying the weight of Valerie's lies, the weight of being the difficult stepdaughter. Now the weight was on the cloud server. The weight was in Mr. Sterling's safe. I stepped out into the cool Portland air. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of rain and exhaust, but to me, it smelled like justice. I was ready for the end. 3 days later, my father returned. I was not there to greet him, but I saw everything. I was sitting in my apartment, a mug of cold coffee in my hand, watching the live feed on my laptop. The flight had been delayed, so it was nearly 9 in the evening when his car pulled into the driveway. He looked exhausted. His shoulders were slumped, and he dragged his suitcase up the steps with the heaviness of a man who just wanted a hot shower and a glass of scotch. He did not get either. The moment the front door opened, Valerie was on him. She did not give him a chance to set his bag down. She threw herself into his arms, but it was not a romantic embrace. It was a performance of hysterical grief. Through the high-definition audio of the hallway camera, I heard her sobbing. It was a wet, ragged sound that would have broken any husband's heart. "Mark," she wailed, burying her face in his neck. "Oh, thank God you are home. It has been a nightmare, a complete nightmare." My father dropped his briefcase, his face instantly contorting with worry. "What is it? Is it the house? Is it Kayla?" "She is gone." "Mark," Valerie cried. pulling back just enough to look him in the eye. Her mascara artfully smudged. She packed a bag and left 2 days ago. She screamed at me. She said terrible, hateful things. I tried. Mark, I really tried to talk to her about the will, about us, but she just flew into a rage. She said she hates me. She said she hates you for marrying me. I watched my father's face pale. He looked toward the stairs, as if hoping to see me come down and contradict her. She left? He asked, his voice hollow. She demanded money. Valerie lied, steering him toward the living room, right past the camera I was watching through. She said if we did not give her cash, she was cutting us off forever. She said she was done pretending to be a family. My father sank onto the sofa, the same sofa where Valerie had sat sipping wine and plotting his financial ruin just nights before. He put his head in his hands. I knew she was unhappy, but I never thought she would do this. I had to stop watching. The nausea was rising in my throat. It was one thing to know she was a liar. It was another to watch her break my father's heart in real time with those lies. I picked up my phone. I knew he would call me within minutes. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, my screen lit up, Dad calling. I took a deep breath, composed my voice into a mask of professional detachment, and answered. Hello, Dad? Kayla. His voice was shaking. I just got home. Valerie is telling me. She says you moved out. She says there was a fight. I did not interrupt him. I did not scream. I did not try to defend myself. I stuck to the script Mr. Sterling and I had rehearsed. I am at my apartment. Dad, I said calmly, I am safe. I did leave. Yes, but I think we need to talk about why. Not over the phone. But she says you demanded money. He stammered, clearly confused by my calm tone versus Valerie's hysteria. She says you threatened her. Dad, I said firmly, I want to resolve this. I want everything to be clear. I have already spoken to Mr. Sterling. There was a pause. Sterling? Why did you call Sterling? Because this concerns the family estate and the future of the company. I said, I think it is best if we all meet. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, at Mr. Sterling's office. My father hesitated. I could hear Valerie in the background, her voice a muffled drone of complaints. Kayla, can't you just come home? We can talk here. No, I said, I will not step foot in that house again until this is settled. Mr. Sterling's office, please, Dad, if you trust me at all, just do this one thing. He sighed, a sound of infinite weariness. Okay. We will be there. I hung up. I did not sleep that night. I spent the hours reviewing the file one last time, ensuring every clip was cued, every audio file was clear. I felt like a soldier the night before a battle, cleaning my rifle, checking my ammunition. The next morning, Portland was covered in a blanket of gray fog. I arrived at Mr. Sterling's office at 8:30. I was wearing my best suit, a sharp navy blazer and tailored trousers. I had covered the bruise on my cheek with heavy concealer, but if you looked closely, the swelling was still visible. I wanted it to be hidden just enough to look like I was trying to hide it, but visible enough to be found. Mr. Sterling met me in the conference room. It was a large, imposing space with a long mahogany table and a massive flat-screen monitor mounted on the wall. Are you ready? He asked. I nodded. I am ready. At 9 o'clock exactly, the receptionist opened the door. My father walked in first. He looked terrible. His eyes were red-rimmed, his skin gray. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 3 days. Valerie followed him. She looked perfect. She was wearing a cream-colored dress suit that screamed innocent victim. She had a silk scarf tied around her neck and was clutching my father's arm as if she were too frail to stand on her own. When she saw me, her eyes narrowed for a fraction of a second, but then she composed her face into an expression of tragic disappointment. Kayla, my father said, his voice thick with emotion. He moved to hug me, but I took a small step back and offered my hand. Hello, Dad, I said. He looked hurt, but he took my hand. Then he saw the side of my face. He frowned, peering closer, What happened to your face?" Before I could answer, Valerie cut in. "She probably bumped into something while she was throwing her tantrum packing her bags," she said, her voice smooth and sad. "Or maybe she did it to herself to make me look bad. I would not put it past her at this point." Mr. Sterling cleared his throat. "Please have a seat." We sat, my father and Valerie on one side of the wide table, me and Mr. Sterling on the other. The battle lines were drawn. Valerie started talking immediately. She clearly wanted to control the narrative before any legal terms were discussed. "Mr. Sterling," she began, clasping her hands on the table. "I do not know why this meeting was necessary, but I am glad we are here. Mark and I have discussed this. We are heartbroken that Kayla has chosen to alienate herself from this family. However, we want to be generous." She looked at me with a pitying smile. I told Mark that even though Kayla was difficult while he was away, I am willing to forgive. We are prepared to offer her the financial assistance she demanded, a lump sum, to help her get set up somewhere else, somewhere she can be happy, away from the stress of a family she clearly does not want to be part of. My father nodded slowly, looking down at the table. "Kayla, Valerie told me you asked for a buyout, if that is what you want. If that is what it takes to give you a start, I will make it happen. I just want peace." I looked at my father. He truly believed it. She had spun a web so thick he could not see the sky. He thought he was buying his daughter's independence and his wife's safety. "Mr. Sterling," I said quietly. Mr. Sterling stood up. "Thank you, Mrs. Hartman, for your perspective. However, my client did not come here to negotiate a settlement for her departure. She came here to provide evidence regarding the management of the estate and the safety of Mr. Hartman." Valerie frowned, a flicker of unease crossing her face. "Evidence? What evidence?" "We are just talking about updating the will and giving her a check." Mr. Sterling looked at me. "Kayla?" I stood up. I did not look at Valerie. I looked straight at my father. "Dad," I said, my voice steady, "you asked me to be fair. You asked me to respect the woman you married. I tried. But you also taught me to look at the data. You taught me that when the system is compromising the integrity of the structure, you do not patch it, you expose it." I opened my laptop. I picked up the HDMI cable lying on the table and plugged it into the port. The massive screen on the wall flickered to life. Valerie looked at the screen, then at the laptop, then at me. The color began to drain from her face. She realized, in that second, that I had not been playing a game on my phone during the days I was sulking in my room. "What is this?" Valerie demanded, her voice rising in pitch. "Mark, tell her to stop. I do not want to watch some montage of her complaints." "Just watch, Dad," I said. I hit the spacebar. The video started. It was the footage from the living room, 3 days ago. The timestamp was clearly visible in the corner. Tuesday, 8:15 a.m., 10 minutes after my father had left for the airport. On the screen, the front door slammed. Valerie turned around. The transformation was visceral. My father watched, his eyes widening, as his wife's face shifted from the loving goodbye she had given him to a mask of pure sneering contempt. "Do not move," the Valerie on the screen commanded. In the conference room, the real Valerie gasped. "Mark, she filmed me? This is illegal. You cannot." "Quiet," Mr. Sterling said sharply. The video played on. My father watched as Valerie berated me. He heard her call me a leech. He heard her scream that he was weak, that he was sentimental, that he was still married to a ghost. I saw my father flinch as if he had been slapped. He looked at the woman sitting next to him, who was now gripping the edge of the table, her knuckles white. Then came the moment. On the screen, Valerie lunged. The sound of the slap echoed through the conference room, loud and crisp, crack. My father jumped in his seat. He saw my head snap back. He saw the Valerie on the screen stand over me, her face twisted in a triumphant smirk. "Your father is not here to protect you," the recorded voice hissed. In the room, Silence reigned. Absolute, suffocating silence. My father was staring at the screen, his mouth slightly open, his face completely drained of blood. He looked from the screen to me, seeing the faint bruise under my makeup, and then he looked at Valerie. It was a look of horror, as if he was seeing a monster wearing his wife's skin. But I was not done. I did not pause the video. I let it roll to the next clip. The confession. I want what is mine. 50%. I have been keeping a separate ledger. Valerie started to stand up. Mark, please. I was angry. She provoked me. You do not understand. Then came the phone call. Refinance the house. Liquidate some of that Hartman tech stock. He will be signing whatever I put in front of him. The words hung in the air, toxic and undeniable. This was not a crime of passion. This was a calculation. This was a business strategy. My father's hands were trembling. He placed them flat on the table to steady them. And finally, the last clip. The office, the night vision green. My father watched his wife, the woman he slept beside, pull a set of lockpicks from her pocket. He watched her crack his private safe. He watched her lay out his will, his deeds, his life's work, and photograph them one by one. I paused the video on the image of Valerie holding my mother's will. A look of greedy concentration on her face. I unplugged the cable. The screen went black. For a long moment, no one moved. The air conditioning hummed in the ceiling. The city traffic outside was a muffled murmur. Inside, the world had stopped. Valerie was standing now. She looked cornered, her eyes darting around the room, looking for an exit, an excuse, a lie that could cover a mountain of truth. She looked at my father. Mark, she whispered, her voice trembling. But this time it was real fear. Mark, baby, please, you have to listen to me. That is taken out of context. I was just trying to organize things. I was trying to protect us. She is manipulating you. She edited that. My father slowly turned his head to look at her. The exhaustion was gone from his face, replaced by something much colder, something hard and jagged. He looked at Mr. Sterling. Is this verified? Mr. Sterling nodded. The metadata is intact. Mark, the timestamps, the audio frequencies, it is all authentic. And the attempted access to your bank accounts? The IP address traces back to the device Valerie is holding in her hand right now. My father looked back at Valerie. He stood up slowly. He did not scream. He did not rage. He spoke in a voice so quiet, it was terrifying. You hit her, he said. Valerie flinched. Mark, You waited until my car was around the corner, and you hit my daughter. She provoked me, Valerie screeched, losing her composure entirely. She looked at me like she owns the place. She needed to be taught a lesson. My father slammed his hand down on the table. The sound made everyone jump. She is my daughter, he roared, his face flushing red. And you are a thief. He looked at her with pure disgust. You talked about me like I was a senile old fool. He is weak. He will sign whatever I put in front of him. Is that what you think of me? Mark, no. I love you, Valerie sobbed, reaching for him. Do not touch me. My father recoiled, stepping back as if she were contagious. Do not you ever touch me again. Valerie turned to the lawyer, then to me, her eyes wild. She realized the soft power she had wielded for 5 years had evaporated. She tried to switch tactics, to find the aggression that had served her so well in the living room. You cannot do this, she hissed at me. You set me up. This is entrapment. It is not entrapment to record a crime in my own home. Valerie, I said calmly. Mr. Sterling stepped forward. Mrs. Hartman, I suggest you sit down and be quiet. Everything we have just viewed is admissible in court. We are currently preparing to file for an immediate restraining order, a freeze on all joint assets, and divorce proceedings based on cruelty and attempted fraud. Valerie stared at him, her mouth working soundlessly. And Mr. Sterling continued, his voice dropping an octave. Given the evidence of the assault and the unauthorized computer access, we are also discussing with the district attorney whether to press criminal charges. The blood drained from Valerie's face completely. Criminal charges? That depends on you, my father said. He looked at me. He looked at the bruise on my cheek. His eyes filled with tears. And for the first time in 5 years, I saw my dad again. Not the confused, henpecked husband, my dad. He turned to Valerie. "You want a buyout?" he asked, his voice shaking with suppressed rage. "You want a settlement?" Valerie nodded frantically, hope sparking in her eyes. "Yes, Mark. Let's just end this. I will go. Just give me my share and I will go." "Your share?" My father laughed. A bitter, dry bark. "You almost stole my company. You abused my child. Your share is nothing." He leaned over the table, getting right in her face. "You are going to sign whatever Mr. Sterling puts in front of you. You are going to walk out of my house with exactly what you brought into it. And if you ever come near Kayla or me again, if you ever try to contest this, I will let Kayla release that video to every charity board, every art gallery, and every news station in Oregon, and then I will let the police come and pick you up." He pointed to the door. "Now get out of my sight." Valerie looked at him. She looked at the steel in his spine. She looked at the laptop that held her destruction. She realized, finally, that the game was over. The weak man she had planned to exploit had just become her executioner. She grabbed her purse. She did not look at me. She turned and walked out of the conference room, her heels clicking on the floor. But the rhythm was different this time. It was not the click of a conqueror. It was the scurry of a rat fleeing a sinking ship. The door closed behind her. The room was silent again. My father stood there, his chest heaving, staring at the closed door. Then, his legs seemed to give out. He sank back into the chair and covered his face with his hands. I watched him, my heart aching. I knew this was the moment that would define the rest of our relationship. "Dad?" I whispered. He lowered his hands. He looked at me, tears streaming down his face. "I am so sorry, Kayla," he choked out. "I am so sorry. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know." I stood up and walked around the table. I put my arms around him. He buried his face in my blazer and wept, the deep, racking sobs of a man mourning the death of an illusion. I held him tight. I looked over his shoulder at the blank screen on the wall. The video was over. The truth was out. The family we had pretended to be was dead, but the family we actually were, the two of us, was still standing. "It is okay. Dad," I whispered. "It is over. We got her." But I knew, as I held him, that it wasn't quite over yet. Valerie was cornered, and cornered animals bite. But this time, we had the teeth. The video screen had gone black, but the image of Valerie picking the lock to my father's safe seemed to be burned into the retina of everyone in the room. The silence that followed was heavy, thick with the debris of a shattered marriage. My father sat frozen. He was staring at the blank monitor, his face a mask of gray ash. He looked like a man who had survived a car crash, checking his limbs to see if they were still attached. When he finally spoke, his voice was unrecognizable. It was not the voice of the confident business owner, nor the gentle father I knew. It was a flat, dead sound, stripped of all emotion. "Is there any chance," he asked, not looking at anyone, "that this is not real? Is there any chance this is deep fake technology or edited footage?" He was asking for a lifeline. He was begging for a reality where his wife was not a criminal and an abuser. "Mr. Sterling did not hesitate. He answered with the clinical precision of a surgeon. "No. Mark, we have had the raw files analyzed by a third-party forensic digital expert this morning before the meeting. The metadata is continuous. The timestamps align perfectly with the logs from the security server. The audio frequencies match the acoustics of your living room. There are no jump cuts, no pixelation variances, and no AI artifacts. What you saw is exactly what happened." The confirmation hit my father like a physical blow. He closed his eyes. exhaling a breath that sounded like a rattle in his chest. Valerie, who had been sitting in stunned silence, suddenly seemed to realize that her initial strategy of denial had failed. The evidence was too absolute. She could not claim it did not happen. So, she did what narcissists always do when cornered by the truth. She changed the narrative. She became the victim. A sob ripped from her throat. It was loud, theatrical, and desperate. "Oh, Mark," she wailed, reaching for his hand across the mahogany table. He pulled his hand away as if she were made of burning coal, but she did not stop. "You do not understand. You were not there. I was so stressed. I was so overwhelmed." She looked at him with wide, wet eyes, tears streaming down her face in a perfect river of sorrow. "You know how hard it has been for me lately," she pleaded. "The menopause, the hormones, the anxiety. I have been feeling so abandoned. You are always working. You are always traveling. And then you leave me alone in that big house with her." She gestured at me, but she did not look at me. I was just a prop in her tragedy. She knows how to push my buttons. Mark, she knows exactly what to say to make me feel small. I just snapped. It was a moment of madness. I have never, ever heard a fly before. You know me. You know my heart. She was rewriting history in real time. She was blaming her biology, her age, and even my father's work ethic for her decision to strike me. "It was just a slap," she cried, her voice pitching higher. "I did not beat her. I just wanted her to stop looking at me with that judgment. And the safe, Mark, I was just scared. I was scared you were going to die on a plane or get sick, and I would be left with nothing. My ex-husband left me with nothing. I was just trying to see where we stood. I was trying to protect myself because I was terrified of being on the street again." It was a masterful performance. She wove threads of truth, her bad prior marriage, her anxiety, into a tapestry of lies. She was trying to tap into my father's savior complex, the very thing that had made him marry her in the first place. I watched my father. 5 years ago, this would have worked. 5 years ago, he would have offered her a tissue and apologized for working too hard. He would have told me that Valerie was fragile and that I needed to be more understanding. But the man sitting next to me was not the man from 5 years ago. He was a man who had just watched his wife plot to liquidate his life's work. Mark turned his head slowly to look at her. His eyes were dry. "Stress," he repeated, the word tasting like dust in his mouth. "You hit my daughter because you were stressed. You broke into my safe because you were lonely." He shook his head slowly. "I am remembering," he said softly, almost to himself. "I am remembering all the times Kayla told me she did not want to come over for dinner. I am remembering all the times she left early. I am remembering when she told me you threw away her mother's things, and I told her she was being oversensitive." He looked at me then. The pain in his eyes was so raw I almost had to look away. "I told you to be nicer to her," he whispered to me. "I told you to make an effort. God forgive me." Valerie saw she was losing him. The guilt tactic was backfiring. She pivoted again. She turned her tear-stained face toward me. "Kayla," she said, her voice trembling with a sickening sweetness. "Honey, please, do not do this to your father. Look at him. You are breaking his heart." She reached out as if to touch my arm, but stopped when she saw the look on Mr. Sterling's face. "We are family. Kayla," she implored. "Families have fights. Families have bad days. But we do not destroy each other with lawyers. We do not let outsiders like him." She gestured to Mr. Sterling. "Come between us. I am sorry I hit you. I will apologize every day if you want. But do not send me to prison. Do not ruin your father's reputation by dragging this through the courts." She was using my empathy against me. She knew I loved my father. She knew I hated conflict. She was betting that the good girl in me would fold to save the family honor. I looked at her. I saw the fear in her eyes. But I also saw the calculation. She was not sorry she hit me. She was sorry she got caught. I took a deep breath. I felt the bruise on my cheek. A hot, tight reminder of her love. "Valerie," I said, my voice steady and cool, I do not want you to go to prison because I enjoy suffering. I do not want revenge. Hope sparked in her eyes. She thought she had me. But, I continued, leaning forward, I need to be safe, and my father needs to be safe. You proved, on camera, that you are a danger to both of us. You proved that your definition of family includes assault and theft. I looked at Mrs. Sterling. Tell her what we need. Mr. Sterling adjusted his glasses. He looked at Valerie with the dispassionate gaze of an executioner. Mrs. Hartman, my client is willing to forego pressing immediate criminal charges for assault and battery, provided you agree to our terms right now. If you hesitate, if you negotiate, or if you attempt to contact either of my clients after you leave this room, we will hand the USB drive to the district attorney. Valerie swallowed hard. What terms? She whispered. First, Sterling said, ticking points off on his fingers. A permanent restraining order. You will not come within 500 feet of Kayla Pierce, her home, or her place of employment. Second, you will vacate the marital residence within 24 hours. Where will I go? Valerie gasped. That is not our concern, Sterling said coldly. Third, you will agree to a full forensic audit of all marital finances. We know about the separate ledger you mentioned in the video. We will find it. Any funds that you have siphoned from Mr. Hartman's accounts or his company will be repaid from your share of the marital assets. He paused, letting the weight of that sink in. Fourth, you will sign a post-nuptial agreement today that waives your right to contest the validity of the video evidence in any future divorce proceedings. And finally, you will sign a statement admitting to the events on the tape. Valerie looked like she was going to be sick. Admitting to it, that means I can never. It means you can never spin this story, I said, cutting her off. It means you can never tell the neighbors I attacked you. It means the truth is locked down, legally and forever. Valerie looked at my father. Mark, please, this is excessive. I will leave. I will go. We can just file for a divorce, a quiet, simple divorce, irreconcilable differences. We do not need all this. Ugliness. Think of the company. Think of what people will say if they find out your wife was accused of this. She was trying to barter with his pride. She was offering him a clean public image in exchange for letting her off the hook. Let's just end it amicably, she urged, her voice low. For your sake, I will walk away. Just let me leave with my dignity. My father stared at her. For a long minute, he said nothing. He looked at the woman he had shared a bed with for 5 years. He looked at the hands that had stroked his hair and then struck his daughter. Dignity, my father repeated. He stood up. He was not a tall man, but in that moment, he seemed to fill the room. You want to talk about dignity. Valerie, you want to talk about saving face. He walked around the table until he was standing right in front of her. She shrank back in her chair. You think this is about the slap, he said quietly. You think I am angry because you hit her, and I am. I am furious, but I could almost forgive a moment of anger. People break. People make mistakes. He leaned down, his hands gripping the arms of her chair, trapping her. But I saw the rest of the video. Valerie, I saw you pick the lock. I saw you photograph my will. I heard you on the phone with my accountant, planning to sell my stock. His voice shook with a rage that was terrifying in its restraint. That was not stress. That was not hormones. That was a plan. You looked at me, every single night, and you smiled, and you told me you loved me, and all the while, you were waiting for me to die. You were calculating how much I was worth. He pulled back, standing straight. I brought you into this family. I trusted you with my daughter. I trusted you with my life, and you looked at us as a bank account to be cracked. That is not a loss of dignity. Valerie, that is a lack of humanity. Kayla sat there watching him. My heart was breaking for him, but at the same time, a fierce pride was blooming in my chest. For years, I had felt abandoned by him. I had felt like he chose her over me, but I realized now that he had been a victim too. He had been manipulated just as skillfully as I had been marginalized. He was not the villain of my story. He was the other casualty. And seeing him finally fight back, finally see the truth, healed a wound in me that I had not realized was so deep. Valerie looked at him, and the mask finally fell away completely. There was no more sadness, no more fear, just a cold, hard bitterness. She realized the quiet divorce was off the table. She realized she had no allies left. "Fine," she spat, her face twisting into a sneer. "Ruin me. Go ahead. See if I care. But you remember one thing. Mark, you are the one who is going to be lonely. You are the old man who needs a nurse, not a wife. And she pointed a shaking finger at me. She will leave you too. She will take her money and go back to her little life, and you will rot in that big house all by yourself." She stood up, smoothing her skirt with trembling hands. "And do not think this will be quiet. I will tell everyone. I will tell the country club. I will tell the board. I will tell them your daughter is a spy who bugs her own home. I will tell them you are a weak, pathetic man who lets his child run his life. I will make you the laughingstock of Portland." It was her last card, the threat of social annihilation. I did not even have to speak. My father did it for me. "Go ahead," my father said, his voice calm and cold. "Tell them whatever you want, because the day you open your mouth to spread a single lie about Kayla, I will release the video." Valerie froze. "I will post it myself," my father said. "I will send it to every friend you have. I will send it to your old gallery. I will send it to the news. And then everyone will see exactly who you are. They will see the slap. They will hear the greed. They will see the real Valerie." He crossed his arms. "So you can have your reputation, or you can have your revenge, but you cannot have both." Valerie stared at him. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. She looked at the laptop on the table, the black box that held her destruction. She knew he meant it. In the age of the internet, that video was a nuclear weapon, and we had the launch codes. She looked at me one last time. Her eyes were filled with a pure, distilled hatred. "You little witch," she whispered. I looked back at her, my face impassive. "Goodbye, Valerie." She grabbed her purse. She did not look at my father again. She walked to the door, her posture rigid, her dignity in tatters. She opened the door and walked out into the hallway, and out of our lives. "Mr. Sterling let out a long breath. "Well," he said, sitting back down, "that went about as well as could be expected." My father did not sit down. He walked over to the window and looked out at the gray city skyline. He stood there for a long time, his back to us. "Dad?" I asked softly. He turned around. He looked tired, incredibly tired, but his eyes were clear. "Do it, Sterling," he said. "File the papers, the restraining order, the divorce, the audit, all of it. Burn it down." "But Mark," Sterling cautioned, "this will be messy. The audit alone will take months. The divorce could drag on if she fights the post-nup. It will be expensive. It will be public." "I do not care," my father said. He looked at me, and a sad smile touched his lips. "I spent 5 years trying to keep the peace. I spent 5 years trying to save money and save face, and it cost me my relationship with my daughter." He walked over to me and put his hand on my shoulder. His grip was firm. "I am done compromising. I want her out of our lives. Kayla, I want her name off the house. I want her name off the accounts. I want her gone, whatever it costs." He looked at Mr. Sterling. "Protect my daughter, protect the company, and end this marriage." Mr. Sterling nodded, pulling a fresh legal pad toward him. "Consider it done." I looked at my father. I saw the grief in his face, the mourning for the years he had lost, and the love that had been a lie. But I also saw relief. The suffocating fog of gaslighting had lifted. We walked out of the office an hour later. The sun was trying to break through the clouds. My father stopped on the sidewalk and looked at me. "I need a drink," he said. "A real drink, not wine." I smiled, a genuine smile this time. "There is a place around the corner," I said. "They make a good old-fashioned." He nodded. "Lead the way, kiddo." We walked down the street together. We were battered. We were bruised. My cheek still throbbed, and his heart was broken. But for the first time in 5 years, we were walking in the same direction. The stepmother was gone. The camera had done its job, and now, the real work of rebuilding the ruins could begin. The final hearing was not a dramatic criminal trial, but something far more sterile and, in its own way, more brutal. A civil court proceeding for the division of assets. But thanks to Mr. Sterling, it was also a hearing to confirm a petition for a permanent restraining order, which required showing cause. And that cause was the video. The courtroom was small, paneled in dark wood, and smelled of floor wax and old paper. We were not in the main courthouse, but a smaller family court annex, which somehow made it feel more claustrophobic. Valerie was there, sitting next to a new, expensive-looking lawyer. She had dyed her hair a softer, more matronly brown, and was wearing a modest gray suit, the picture of a woman wronged. She refused to look at me. My father sat beside me and Mr. Sterling, his back straight as a steel rod. Valerie's lawyer, a slick man with a gold watch, went first. He was all smooth condescension. "Your Honor," he began, "what we have here is a simple, if unfortunate, domestic dispute, a family argument that got overheated. My client, Mrs. Hartman, has been a devoted and loving wife for 5 years. She contributed her time, her energy, and her emotional labor to building a home for Mr. Hartman. We believe her contributions entitle her to 50% of the marital assets, as is standard." He waved a hand toward me. "The claims of assault are a gross exaggeration, manufactured by a resentful adult stepdaughter to poison her father against his wife and secure a larger inheritance. It was a single, regrettable slap. De minimis in the eyes of the law, and certainly not grounds to deny my client her fair and equitable share." Mr. Sterling stood up. He was not slick. He was a pillar of granite. "Your Honor," he said, his voice filling the room, "we are not here to discuss a dispute. We are here to discuss a pattern of calculated abuse, documented criminal intent, and a conspiracy to defraud my client, Mr. Hartman." He looked at Valerie's lawyer. "You call it emotional labor. We call it conspiracy to liquidate assets. You call it a family argument. We call it assault and battery. You call it de minimis. I call it the act that broke the camel's back. And as for manufacturing evidence, my client, Ms. Pierce, is a cybersecurity professional. She did not manufacture anything. She simply recorded the truth." "The video you are about to see, Your Honor," Sterling continued, "was captured on a legally installed security system authorized by the homeowner, Mr. Hartman, in the common areas of his own home, and it will prove every single one of our claims." The judge, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s, looked down from the bench. "Proceed, Mr. Sterling." The lights in the courtroom dimmed slightly. A large monitor, identical to the one in Sterling's office, was wheeled to face the judge. I hit play. The courtroom watched. They watched my father leave. They watched Valerie's face transform. They heard her call me a leech. They heard her threats. They heard her confession about the 50% partnership and the separate ledger. Then, they heard the crack of the slap. Valerie's lawyer flinched. The judge's face remained impassive, but she leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. They watched her whisper, "Your father is not here to protect you." I did not stop the video. I let it roll. I showed the judge the phone call to Robert, the accountant. Liquidate. He will sign whatever I put in front of him. I showed the judge the night vision footage of Valerie in her dark sweats, picking the lock on my father's safe, and calmly photographing his will, my mother's will, and his stock certificates. When the video finished, the screen went black. The only sound in the room was the faint hum of the air conditioner. Valerie's lawyer was pale. He was shuffling his papers, his bravado gone. The judge looked at him. "Do you have any response to that, counsel? Or does your client's emotional labor also include lockpicking and conspiring with the family accountant?" "Your Honor," he stammered, My client she was not herself. She was afraid. This is a gross invasion of her privacy. The judge cut him off. The system was installed by Mr. Hartman's daughter, a security professional, at his request, in his own home. There is no reasonable expectation of privacy when committing a crime in the living room. The evidence is objective, it is clear, and it is admitted. She turned her gaze to me. Ms. Pierce, do you wish to make a statement? I stood up. My hands were shaking, but my voice was not. Your Honor, I said, I have been asked in this process what I want. Am I seeking revenge? Do I want to punish her? I looked at Valerie. She was staring at the table, her face white. This is not about revenge for a slap. This is about boundaries. For 5 years, I was told that my presence in my own home was a problem, that my memories were an inconvenience, and that my boundaries were oversensitive. I am here today not to punish her, but to protect my father, and to protect my right to exist in a space free from manipulation and, yes, free from violence. That video is not an attack. It is a shield. It is the truth. And all I am asking the court to do is honor it. I sat down. Mr. Sterling placed a hand on my arm. The judge nodded, then looked at my father. Mr. Hartman? My father stood. He looked older, but he also looked lighter. The weakness that Valerie had preyed on was gone, replaced by a quiet, sad resolve. Your Honor, he said, his voice thick. I have to take responsibility. I was blind. I was a coward. I wanted peace in my home so badly that I was willing to sacrifice my daughter's comfort for it. I ignored the signs. I told her she was wrong. I failed her. And in doing so, I enabled this. He gestured to Valerie. I am not here to save my marriage. That marriage was a lie. I am here to do what I should have done 5 years ago. I am asking the court to protect my daughter, to protect my company, the one I built from nothing, and to dissolve this partnership in a way that reflects the truth of her. He could not even say her name. Her actions were not those of a partner. They were those of a predator, and I am asking the court to rule accordingly. He sat down. The judge looked at her notes for a long, silent minute. Mrs. Hartman, the judge said, your lawyer has argued for 50% of the marital assets based on your contributions. The court, however, has just watched a video of those contributions. They include assault, extortion, conspiracy to commit fraud, and attempted theft. This court does not reward criminal behavior. Valerie looked up, her eyes wide with panic. The judgment is as follows, the judge said, her voice a hammer. The restraining order against Mrs. Hartman is granted, effective immediately. The changes to Mr. Hartman's will, separating his assets from the marital estate and securing his daughter's inheritance, are approved. The forensic audit of the joint account stands. As for the division of assets, given the evidence of bad faith, financial malice, and the short duration of the marriage, this court does not find that a 50% share is equitable. The judge looked at Valerie's lawyer. Your client will receive a one-time lump sum payment of $25,000, representing a refund for her emotional labor, and she will forfeit any and all claims to the Hartman house, Hartman Technical Solutions, and any of Mr. Hartman's personal or retirement accounts. Her plan to defeat her stepdaughter has, by her own hand, resulted in her own total financial ruin. Valerie made a small, strangled sound. It was over. She had lost everything. We are adjourned, the judge said, and banged the gavel. We stood up. My father let out a breath that seemed to be 5 years in the making. He hugged me, right there in the courtroom. It is over, kiddo, he whispered. We gathered our things and walked out into the bright, sterile hallway. And of course, she was there. Valerie was waiting for us, her lawyer trying to pull her away. She was no longer the calm, matronly victim. Her face was a mask of pure, ugly hatred. Was it worth it? She hissed at me, her voice a low vibration of venom. Was it? You destroyed a family. You broke your father's heart. You aired our private life to a room full of strangers. All for what? Because you got slapped? Are you proud of yourself?" I stopped. I looked at her. I was not afraid of her anymore. She was just a woman. A sad, empty woman who had overplayed her hand. A family was not destroyed by a video. "Valerie," I said, my voice calm and quiet. "The family was broken the moment you decided that violence and lies were acceptable tools. It was broken when you saw my father as a target and me as an obstacle. The camera did not create the truth. It just provided a mirror." She stared at me, speechless, her rage choking her. She turned to my father, her last, desperate attempt. "Mark?" she pleaded, her voice suddenly breaking, trying to find that old well of pity. "Mark, you cannot let her do this to us." My father looked at her. He studied her face, as if seeing her for the first time, and the last. "I used to think you loved me, Valerie," he said, his voice soft with a terrible, final sadness. "I used to think you loved this family, but you did not. You just loved what you could take from us." He turned his back on her. He put his arm around my shoulder. "Let's go home, Kayla." We walked away, leaving her standing alone in the hallway. We did not look back. I stood on the courthouse steps, the same steps I had walked up what felt like a lifetime ago. The sun had finally broken through the Portland clouds, and the light was sharp and bright, making me squint. I felt empty. But it was a good emptiness. It was the cleaned, scoured feeling of a room after a fire, ready to be rebuilt. I had lost the fantasy of a new, blended family. I had lost the illusion of my father's perfect second chance, but I had gained something far more valuable. I had gained my father back, and I had gained myself. My stepmother beat me when I was alone, but she forgot one crucial thing. In the modern world, in a house wired by a woman who deals in data, no one is ever truly alone. In this house, every threat, every lie, and every act of violence had the potential to become evidence. And sometimes, the only thing you need to reclaim your life is one tiny camera, still recording. I went back to my apartment that night. I opened my laptop and pulled up the security system for my father's house. I looked at the file labeled Valerie Hartman. I clicked on it, and I hit Delete User. I watched her credentials vanish from the system. I revoked her access to the house, to the network, to our lives. Then, I closed the video file, the one I had watched 100 times. I moved it into a locked archive, and I closed the window. I stood up and walked to my own window, looking down at the lights of the city. For the first time in 5 years, my boundaries were solid. My life was my own, and I was finally safe. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know what you think. Let me know in the comments where you are listening from, so we can connect and share our thoughts. Please be sure to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it a boost by hitting the hype button so more people can hear this story.